All right, we're pleased to be joined now on the Football Spin by Sky Sports' Gary Neville and Jimmy Carragher. The Premier League returns tomorrow evening, to Sky Sports with a double header. Sky Sports and Now TV will show 64 matches, 39 exclusive to subscribers, and then an extra 25 are available on Sky's free-to-air channel. So that means you two boys are going to be busy, and I know you're both at home. So, I mean, what happens? Are you boys going to be at the games doing co-coms, or are you going to be sitting on your couch like the rest of us doing co-coms from home? Jimmy?
No, we're actually going to be at the ground. Really, I mean, a lot of the people will not be normally at the ground, won't be there. I think us doing co-comments and some of the lads who don't do that, you think of Graham, Roy and Jamie Redknapp, I think they're going to be at Sky Studios. Obviously, the situation that we're in now, we don't want to be travelling around. You can't have too many people at the stadium, so it's obviously got to be safe and sound. But I think we're going to stay sort of in our area, and with Sky Studios being down south, down London, that'll probably be more for Graham and Jamie. I'm sure we'll go down there at some stage, but we're quite lucky that a lot of the big teams are in the Northwest. They're involved in the game, so it's Anfield, Goodison, Man City and Old Trafford for me, I think, in the first few weeks.
Gary, how's lockdown been treating you? Any new skills or any new talents that you've acquired over these months with extra time on your hands?
No, I think the only thing that's different for me, obviously, is I've had headaches all the time. I think it's because I've been on these Zoom calls.
That's because Liverpool are going to win the league.
Yeah, does Liverpool going to win the league? That's what I've been thinking about for 3 months. No, I just think I've had headaches all the time because I've been on these Zoom calls. So no, I've nothing new. I don't think. I think it obviously gives us all an opportunity to be able to. It's been a test. Obviously, for different people in different ways, whether it be health, whether it be economic. Obviously, I've been heavily involved with Salford in terms of what the decisions that we've had to make as a club in the last few months, but obviously they've been part of the league calls as well. And then with the hotels, it's been massively challenging. There's no real, you talk about no football supporters being in the stadium, a problem for football. Imagine, no guests in hospitality, restaurants or hotels is a massive issue, and there's going to be massive issues in that industry for the next 12 to 18 months. So no, it's been a challenge, but I've enjoyed it. It's you have to react to it, don't you?
Jamie, I think you mentioned Roy there. He's going to be at the games, or maybe I think it was that he wasn't going to be at the games. But I would just wonder if you've been keeping an eye on him. How's he getting on? Is he doing all right?
Yeah, I think so. He's been on the football show a couple of times. We've been on a lot more than him, so we know if we've started the show well, because 2 or 3 times I think we both get a text off Roy whether he's happy with what we've said or he's not happy really early in the show in the first hour or something. So that's been quite entertaining actually. And sometimes when the camera comes on us, we're looking down at our phone and we've been caught out a few times. A lot of time that's a text message off Roy if he's not particularly happy with either what we've said or what a guest has said. So he's still making his presence felt, no doubt.
Harry, were you surprised when Jurgen Klopp said that what he'd learned in lockdown was that you have an opinion about everything?
Was I upset?
Were you surprised or upset?
Oh, he wasn't surprised.
No, I wasn't surprised nor upset. I don't get upset and I don't get surprised by the obvious.
Okay, Jamie, what would you say? You'd say that was true. What would you say the most surprising thing that Gary has an opinion on is? Like the thing that you've been most stunned to hear him have a strong opinion on?
Well, at one stage, he was threatening to write to government, and then I was thinking, how would you write to government? Who'd you address that to? Where's your post? Who's it? You just write Boris on the front of the thing. Like, he was adamant one day before, I'm writing to government about this. I'm writing to government. I'm like, how would you do that? But he will find a way. He will know. He will find a way. So I'm like,
Jamie, you write to your local MP and say you want it redirecting through to the Prime Minister's office.
But I can't imagine you having a local MP. Are you not the local MP? Are you writing to yourself?
No, do you know something? The problem is we did this show, the football show, for 2 months maybe. 3 times a week, and I've always, over a 5-year period, 10-year period, and Jamie knows this, I've never ever gone onto any debate shows or any talk shows or anything like that, because I generally do believe that you use up, literally just speaking constantly for like 2 hours 3 times a week, and it just becomes a noise. And that's what I've become in the last 2 months. It's just a noise because you get asked 20 questions in a show, you give 20 answers, and I'm asked my opinion, and I'll give my opinion. So the fact that actually Jurgen's recognised it means that, either he's been watching, which is good, it's bugged him, which is good, or he's enjoyed my opinions, which is good. So there's no loser here. But what I would say is that I've always basically maintained on Sky that I do live football. We do sometimes after the show go in the studio, but doing these sort of 3 times a week, 2 hours, I've enjoyed it, but it just feels like you're constantly giving opinions on everything that you're asked. And the reality of it is, I'm glad football's restarting because it means we can concentrate on giving comment on football matches and incidents and players' goals and what they do. So it's better. But he's right. I felt there was a point, maybe, Carrie, you felt the same, where you just felt as though you were literally talking constantly every single day about football and there was nothing happening. So you just offering opinion on the same stuff continuously.
So get on to that.
It was. What can you do? We are getting paid for it though, so I didn't mind.
Most players now in this period are the back now, but they went 9 weeks or so without training or playing football. Like, what's the longest in your professional careers you guys went without playing football?
I was injured.
Yeah,
I was injured for 5 months.
Right, but outside injury, like, with just actually an enforced break, like.
Well, I think what to be honest, the break that they've had now was the normal break when I first started as like a YTS and a U team player. It would be a good solid sort of 2 months. I mean, it wasn't until sort of Benitez came that we'd only have a month off, and so it was funny with Benitez one year. The season finished, and we actually stayed for another 10 days training because of the date we were coming back. So we'd only have a certain amount of time off. And all the lads were going mad, as you'd expect. But I think years ago, it was a good 8 to 10 weeks off. No one would ever go to pre-season before July. It would always be like July the 10th. And then, years later, it would be 2 or 3 weeks before that, really. So that was the old way. It has been slightly different. That they have been training. So it's not like, it's almost like a pre-season. I think no one's known how long it's going to be. That's the difference in that. I'm not saying it could have happened like a week later at any time, but I think everyone was ready for it to be in 3 or 4 weeks' time. The football's going to start. So I do think we've seen it on social media, lots of teams doing training. And you've seen Jose Mourinho and his players in parks doing extra bits of training or trying to push the boundaries as far as they could. So I don't think it's exactly the same, but listen, it's not easy. The only thing I would say is that no one's got an advantage because it's the same for everyone.
I don't get this fitness thing, the players 9 weeks. They've had a chance. We've heard managers, coaches, players, us crying out for winter breaks and the players' time to recover for years and years. And the first time that the players get a genuine rest, a genuine sort of what would be recovery where everybody can let the sort of bodies mentally, physically, no problems whatsoever. But they've continued to be able to train. We've heard managers constantly talk about the training sessions that the players are doing. Players have all had 9-week injuries and come back within 2 or 3 weeks to play football. If it's a European Cup final in a normal season, you're out for 9 weeks. He said, right, he's got 2 weeks to get fit. The manager would come on and say, no problem whatsoever. He'd be back. He's going to have 2 games, 3 games for the European Cup final. They're all playing behind closed doors friendlies, it would seem, at this moment in time as well. I don't get the fitness point at all, I've not bought into that from day one.
And Gary, you don't think it's an issue that because there's only 9-10 games for some teams, like that you don't have any chance to kind of ease your way into the season? You just got to go straight back into it. You don't think that's an issue when you haven't played for that long?
It would be an issue if it wasn't the same for everybody. Everybody's going to be in the same position. I don't think it's a problem. There'll be hamstring injuries, but there are hamstring injuries in ordinary parts of the season anyway. And it's always put down to overplaying. Now we're going to put hamstring injuries down to underplaying or undertraining. I don't get it. The players will have had 3 or 4 weeks to get fit. They've all got gyms or access to gyms in the last 8-9 weeks. They'll have been doing 3 or 4 really good sessions a week in terms of general fitness. I think the players could be in great shape when they come back. I don't see why they wouldn't be in good shape.
No, I agree. And you're talking about being injured. I remember breaking my leg and I was out for 4 months. I didn't end up a 6-week pre-season or an 8-week pre-season. You train for 2 or 3 weeks. You had a couple of reserve games. You went back in the first team. So I'm spot on. And I actually think the break from a Liverpool point of view, you think of like Liverpool's front three, who I don't think have had a break in the summer, probably the last 4 or 5 years with Copa America and African Nations Cups, Olympics, all these different things. Honest to God, I think they could come out flying, not just in these 9 games, but also going into next season, because next season now there's no African Nations Cup, there's no Olympics. And I think that's one of the big reasons why Liverpool didn't, really push the boat out to get Timo Werner, because they're looking at these tournaments that would have been there next season that are now not, when Werner would have got games. And that front three, we know how good it is, but I think it could do them the world of good, really do.
You can't afford him.
We don't need to afford them. They're the best. World champions, European champions, Premier League champions in about 2 weeks.
Jamie, that Premier League could be won at Goodison on this weekend coming. Is that the right decision to play that game there and not to move it to a neutral venue?
I think so. I mean, I questioned probably 6 weeks ago when there was all this talk about the teams near the bottom weren't accepting neutral venues. Now, my problem with, I was all for playing at neutral venues because I thought, well, playing at neutral venues is better than the league being cancelled or teams putting a block on it. Once the league was coming back, the real thing about neutral venues, I can understand, but that people are saying about people congregating and using Liverpool as an example, I get that. But, I mean, what I think will happen is I've got no problem with it. I don't think any fan will be outside the game when the game is going on. I just don't get that at all, really. The game's going on. It's on TV. Everyone can watch it on terrestrial TV. So I don't see any problem with like Liverpool fans being outside Goodison or outside Anfield against Palace. What I do think might happen once Liverpool win the league, if it was in one of those games, you might get a couple of hundred Liverpool fans maybe going to Anfield to get pictures or a picture with, the Shankly statue. I don't know, behind the Kop for social media or something. But I don't think it'll be like a huge amount of people, a mass gathering. Because number one, I think if these people were pictured or their faces were put on social media about flouting lockdown rules or whatever situation we're in at that stage, it wouldn't be great for them, really. I don't think that. But listen, there'll always be people who cross boundaries. We've seen that before the football. And to be honest, we've seen thousands of people on beaches and marches and even VE Day and streets and having street parties. So I think that the way we talk about football fans has been that for a long time, going back years. But I don't think it's right, to be honest.
Gary, looking at United, there's a lot of expectation about Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said that good players can always play together. Do you think that's true?
I think that if they played in this a system whereby
he didn't have to work hard.
See, you've now lit the spark of the last interview that we did, where basically he thought that Paul Pogba shouldn't be in the Liverpool midfield, which I think is embarrassing.
You don't want to get each other's mute buttons again now.
Yeah. So basically, I think they can play together. They're both going to have to be given the freedom to go and play. I think that you would have said this sort of thing 15, 20 years ago. Can they play in the same team together? Systems are more fluid now. Football is more fluid. There's an acceptance that you don't have to be perfect in shape defensively all the time. But, we're not talking about rigid systems anymore. To me, if those two players can't play in the same midfield as each other, with obviously a more defensive player with them, I would say that's a reflection upon, Ollie would take that as a reflection upon himself rather than the players, I would think. I think he can absolutely make that work. When you think of the sort of players that you see playing, when I saw a team at United that had Scholes, Tevez, Rooney, Ronaldo and Giggs in it, that won the European Cup. Obviously, sometimes Owen Hargreaves came in, sometimes Ji-Sung Park came in. But there were games where Paul Scholes in the midfield with Michael Carrick, Michael Carrick was a good defensive player, but not what was a hard man sort of, Carrick, Scholes, Rooney, Ronaldo, they all played in the same team as each other regularly. And there might be a Ji-Sung Park to balance it off, or an Owen Hargreaves from time to time. But generally, if you've got really good players, then they should be able to play together. And my view would be, and that sounds really simple, but particularly in the modern game now, where systems are more attacking, the game's more fluid, there is no excuse for these players not to play together. I think they could be outstanding together. Thanks, Jamie, for giving me silence during that answer.
Obviously, we're coming back to a Premier League season, but we're coming back to a world that has totally changed. Like, we've never had this before, this experience on a global level, but obviously in terms of the Premier League and the transfer market. I'm curious to know what you boys think the transfer market is going to look like now, because will we ever really have the transfer market back as we had it before? I mean, even something as simple as, do you think, or are you getting any sense that players will be less likely to move because maybe they're unsure about going overseas or into a different, going to a different league, a different country? What's your sense of that, Jamie?
No, I don't think so. I think, listen, I don't think the transfer market will be exactly the same now, because I think even some of the top clubs in world football have taken a hit. I think you see that with the Timo Werner deal in terms of Liverpool. I'm convinced without what's gone on, Liverpool would have signed him. But I think financially, I think the makeup of next season also. I think Chelsea in a slightly different situation this season. They've still got they had the transfer ban basically last year. They've still not spent the Hazard money. I think they've sold Morata as well. So I think Chelsea in a position to maybe capitalise on maybe not other teams spending, maybe able to get certain players cheaper, really. But I don't think it'll be long before it gets back to normal, because before you know it, desperation comes back in again, and teams want to be at the top. They want to make top four. They want to get the best players. I don't think this is going to be something that changes football completely. I don't really see that.
Yeah.
I think people will see this for what it is, and hopefully what it is, that it's a once-in-a-lifetime situation. And I think it'll affect the right now, but I don't see it affecting sort of in 2, 3, 4 years' time, the transfer market. I think it'll go back to where we were. And as I said, that desperation for clubs and managers to be the best and win trophies.
I think it'll be at least a couple of years before it gets back to anything near the numbers that we were talking about before. If it may be even 3 or 4, as Jamie says. But there's 4 or 5 big things happened in the last week. I mean, they've been publicised, but you put them together, it gives you, I think, a real good understanding of what basically the problems that the top clubs in England face. Tottenham announced last week that they borrowed £175 million from a bank. Manchester United called upon £140 million of new debt from their revolving facility. Liverpool pulled out of a player at £52 million that they've been courting quite obviously for 12 months and said, we're not going to buy him. And Everton announced that they were looking at 50% cuts and deferrals. That's 4 of the biggest clubs in revenue terms in the world, who have basically made massive financial either reversals or calls upon new debt in the last week. They're huge numbers, those 140, 175 million, 50% cuts and deferrals. So if you're talking about Everton Football Club having to take 50% deferrals to be able to pay wages, how can they even think to enter into the transfer market for a £5 million player or a £10 million player in the next month? Because the players that are in the dressing room that are taking the cuts are going to say, well, hang on a minute, you want a deferral and cut off me at 50%. How can you go and spend money on players outside of the club that are not even here? So I think that what Jamie's just said, I tend to agree with, but there is going to be a massive correction in the next 2 years, 3 years, I think, because this 175 million of debt that Tottenham have paid for, they have to pay that off at some point.
What you're talking about there, like Gary, that element of, like, we've seen in the figures in the UK about the recession that the country has gone into immediately, like we've seen the graph, like all these, like the fact of the world that football is coming back into, it's so changed, and it keeps changing. Like, from coronavirus, we've now had Black Lives Matter, the protests, everything is feeding into this sense of a changed world. Jamie, I'm interested in, you wrote about it in last week about your admiration for the modern day player. I wonder if you could just talk a bit about that, because you set it up very interestingly, saying how you, in 2016, you formed a view of the modern player as pampered, and thinking about it now, you realize that you were wrong. And a lot of your change of opinion is based around what you've seen in the, Marcus Rashford, you talked about Seamus Coleman, Raheem Sterling. Like, could you talk a little bit about that and why they impressed you so much?
Did you admit that you were wrong?
You did, yeah.
It was in my column today. Haven't you read it? No.
Not yet, no. He sent me a copy because it's behind the paywall, isn't it?
Yeah, because the actual column was on the back of England going out to Iceland, really, and I actually blame the players. When actually looking back, I probably should have blamed the staff. You actually think of who was in charge then of Roy Hodgson and Gary Neville as assistant. So maybe that's where I did get it wrong at that stage. But what I think is, I think when I was playing, and you'd have ex-Liverpool players, say for instance Tommy Smith, a perfect example. Everyone thinks the generation in front has got it easy. And listen, life does become easier, and maybe for a lot of people. And then we stop playing, and we think the generation, the academy generation, if you like, it's too easy. They don't clean boots, and all these things get passed on. Every generation says it about the next one. But actually, the way I think players have, conducted themselves in these last few months, and even before that, really. And I was talking about, as you mentioned, Gary's mentioned wage deferral. I think that come from Seamus Coleman going into the dressing room, speaking to players. I think of Jordan Henderson, what he's done in terms of getting 20 captains together. Raheem Sterling, how often he's come out and spoken about racism. Jadon Sancho, taking not the chance, but being brave enough to go as a teenager to a foreign country and live there on his own and make a name for himself. And sometimes we equate bravery with how tough the game is in terms of tackles and challenges and that type of thing in football. But actually, the leadership and some of the things these players have done now in terms of social media as well. I should mention Marcus Rashford. He's had a huge impact in what's happened in these last few months as well. They're showing brilliant leadership, and I class myself as a leader on the pitch. I'm ordering people about, I'm organising, I'm aggressive, I'm screaming at referees. But the leadership we're seeing now is maybe different leadership, but I'm not quite sure I could have. I've played for Liverpool my whole life. Could I have moved as a teenager to a foreign country? I don't think I could. Would I have been brave enough to speak about social issues, racism, maybe on social media if I was in my mid-20s? Maybe I feel more mature now. But these lads are some of them in their early 20s. So that's why I did the column read, and a lot of these players were possibly involved when I made when I'd done that column 3 or 4 years ago, and happy enough to say I was wrong, yeah.
Gary, do you share that view, Jamie, that you should have blamed the management team in 2016 rather than players?
Yeah, you have to take responsibility, all of us that were part of it. But I agree with Jamie. I've been saying it for a few years, to be honest with you. It's one of the reasons we looked at setting up. I genuinely believe that the young lads that are playing now today, the scrutiny they're under, the fact that they're smarter, they're more switched on, they look after themselves better, they're better prepared for post-football careers than we were. I think they're more steely than we were in different ways. The game's different. The game's more fluid. The game's more attacking. You can't kick through the back of people anymore. So it doesn't accept sort of what would be the old-fashioned sort of cloggers that it did 25 years ago. The game's so much better to watch in the sense that it's more attacking, more goals are scored. And I think these lads now are, to be fair, they are more brave in a lot of ways than we are and than we were. And I said the other day on an interview that I sat in a dressing room in 2003, I think it was, next to Ashley Cole, having seen him be abused and heard him being abused during a game for England, and went and got my shower after the game, got on the coach and went back and didn't give it a second thought. And neither did any other player in that dressing room. We never mentioned it. It was just a case of basically, it's almost something that was accepted, something that happened in a different country. It didn't strike with us, and that's unacceptable. And I look back now and think, how bad is that we didn't, pay attention to this sort of abuse and discrimination that was going on right around us. And now players are rising up against it, and rightly so. And I think I said a few months ago on Sky, that I would support players walking off the pitch, and we would have to support them wholeheartedly because it's something that shouldn't be accepted anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you about that, both of you, because we are, I think you mentioned, Gary, going through this time of massive upheaval, social upheaval. The Black Lives Matter protests have been happening across the globe. I was struck by a message actually that Sky Sports News put out this week where, and this is a message I think a lot of media it would echo with them as well, because Sky Sports News said, "We strive to do more, to say more. We're against racial injustice in all forms." And just like you've mentioned there, Gary, in terms of like how you could look differently at your experiences in football, I know, last year, Jamie, you would have apologised to Patrice Evra for Liverpool wearing the T-shirts before the Wigan game with Luis Suarez image after he'd racially abused Evra in 2011. And you also said at the time that the club had got it massively wrong. For both you, is this time causing you to look back at your experiences in football in a different way, Jamie?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the game Gary's talking about, I'm not sure what game it was. I don't know if it was in Spain. Was it in Madrid? Because I was, that was the game. So I was involved. I came on as a sub that night. And again, you're the same. You don't think, obviously you think about it at the time when it happens, but, after the game, it's not something at the forefront of your mind. Really. I mean, the thing with Patrice Evra as well, and what I was pleased about after he came on the show, and obviously I apologise probably on behalf of myself and the club, but I think the club then got in touch with her, and Patrice actually exchanged contact numbers, and he was the first person to tell me that the club had actually been in touch with him a few days. Liverpool Football Club, so he was really pleased about that. And going back, I think that's a big issue. I think there was an issue I think last season with Man City as well, with the two players together. I think it was Bernardo Silva and Mendy, and something was going on. And the unfortunate thing, probably every club's guilty of this, if you go back into the past, and that it becomes that tribal thing of the club rather than actually what's right or wrong. And it's like, we've got to defend our club. We've got to the club can't be seen to be doing wrong, or the club support Luis Suarez, if you like. And other clubs have been in those situations. And a lot of the time, the clubs should come down heavier on their own players. If with misdemeanors, obviously racism's right at the top of that list, but there's other things in different situations. And I think probably too often now, or certainly in the past, clubs have been too quick to support their own player, whether they're right or wrong. I actually think the situation that we're in now, and what's happened in these last probably 12, 18 months, even Raheem Sterling coming out 12, 18 months ago on the back of the game at Chelsea, I think clubs now, I think people know, it does feel like there has, hopefully there's a big change in those situations in terms of football, whether one of your players involved in something that hopefully clubs will see it right, rather than saying we're standing behind our man type of thing. And that's where Liverpool got it wrong. Luis Suarez was wrong. He made a mistake, a big mistake. And we as a club got it wrong on what we did with the T-shirt and how we came out and supported him at that time.
Gary, before we go, I just want to ask you, how pleased are you to see the Premier League back, just so that Liverpool can be crowned champions?
I'm praying for a Manchester City win on Wednesday, so that I'm not commentating on the game on the Sunday night as good as much I am doing when they can win it. I'm hoping that I'm at Old Trafford and the Sheffield United game and they can win it away from me. That's my only hope.
I'll find you, don't worry.
And what were you going to write to the MP about? What were you going to write to the Prime Minister about?
I just earlier in the crisis, I was very critical of the government right at the very beginning on Sky Sports, and it was a mess. It was a shambles from day one. You could see it. They were all over the place. And I just felt like writing to them about using football as I think it was using football as some sort of what would be PR tool for themselves. Anyway, I didn't write. I saved my ink still in my pen, but it could go.
It could go. Well, they haven't really changed. They haven't got it much better, have they?
No.
Okay, absolute pleasure. Listen, thanks so much for joining us. Just to remind everyone, the Premier League returns to Sky Sports with doubleheader on Wednesday, June 17th. Sky Sports on Now TV will show 64 matches, 39 exclusive to the subscribers, and an extra 25 available on Sky's free-to-air channel Pick. And you'll see lots of Jamie and Gary.
And it's live!
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, boys.
Thanks, Leon. Thanks, Paddy.
Take it easy,
Thank
mate.
you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.